Welcome, everybody. It's one of the first July Sundays. It's sunny outside, hopefully. At the time when we are recording, it is pretty sunny out here. And I am very, very happy to have a band here which basically fits my mood because their new record is full of love. Oxbow, thanks for being on the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Great
Thanks
to be
for
here.
having us.
First question, but I always ask, what is the band shirt or merch or anything, please no pants, that you're wearing today?
Oh, well, I'm almost always these days exclusively wearing fight-related stuff. This is a place where I do jiu-jitsu because they give it to me for free, and it's comes pre-stunk, so it's an easy choice to make, and that's where I'm going as soon as the interview is done. So
cool. So you're going in the early morning.
Every day, usually I'm up at 6 going. So Saturday is the one reprieve I get where I get to go a little bit later.
And anyone else who's wearing some kind of music related stuff?
I am actually wearing an Oxbow t-shirt, which is just completely by coincidence.
Which one?
The Thin Black Duke.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm barely wearing pants, so I'll stay, like this.
You and Jeffrey Toobin.
So, if anybody asks, I'm wearing a shirt, but I bought myself at Roadburn this year, Maud the Moth. I loved her performance, a wonderful musician, and yeah. So, I know you guys are all by now again located in California, but where exactly, if I may ask?
I'm in San Francisco.
And I am in East Palo Alto.
I'm in Palo Alto.
Okay, and Greg?
And I am in Santa Clara, so I am the most southern of the four.
You know,
Okay.
I've never been clear on this. I thought I would, if somebody ran here with a gun, I would say that you were in Sunnyvale. Is there? It's
You
not.
know what? If anyone comes with a gun looking for me, tell them I'm in Sunnyvale.
Okay.
That's fucking perfect. Yeah.
Which is larger, Sunnyvale or Santa Clara?
Santa Clara, I think, is a bigger actual footprint.
Yeah. Okay.
But how the fuck should I know? I don't.
Maybe you're an expert.
I'm not.
You got to be an expert at something.
No, I clearly that's not correct.
Probably how to cope with you. But as you publish, as in a few weeks you're going to publish a record full of love songs. Let's start off with an obvious question. Favorite love song of all times?
Oh yeah.
That's pretty easy. I'm not quite sure that that she is the one who wrote it, but her version of it, "You Don't Know What Love Is," by Billie Holiday, has been majorly significant for me. And I actually made the world's biggest mistake and blabbed to. I was having a conversation with Diamanda Gallis and said that Oxbow, I was going to try. If my dream would be to have Oxbow do a cover of that, and she went down to where she gets her sheet music, and she got the sheet music. And she said to me, "You were right. That's a great song." And I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I got the sheet music. I think I'm going to do it." I go, "How the fuck could you do that?" She goes, "Well, you did it to me." I go, "When did we do it to you?" She goes, "When you did Insane Asylum. I had done that first." I go, yeah, but this, I told you." And she goes, "Don't worry. I'll dedicate it to you." So it was cold recompense, but it's a fantastic song.
So the others, what would be your choice, Greg?
Well, I think I think it's in some ways kind of an odd question. I don't categorize music mentally that way, but I would say probably "Hello Stranger" by Barbara Lewis might be my favorite love song. I would have to think really hard on why that is, but it's the first one that comes to my mind.
Doesn't matter. Dan, what would be your choice?
So there's Jefferson Airplane song "Triad," which for some reason I've settled on to answer that question, which is really more an answer about not what love feels like, but how love causes you to adjust who you are. change your ways, your beliefs, maybe.
And Nico, what would be
It's
your
a great
choice?
song.
Oh, yeah,
I have a record. I'm going to answer this way. As a kid in the family, we had a record by Pete Seeger that was greatest hits, and the blurb on the back of the record says, "These are not the greatest hits. These are the songs that we'd listen to in our household, and they come and go." And I think love songs come and go. There's so many fantastic love songs.
Yeah.
If you talk to people that write songs, they will say that almost every song ever written is about love of one kind, between people, between animals, between So in our house,
try that with a Seth Putnam song.
We've been listening to a lot of Depeche Mode lately, and there's a song called Precious that's it's a really tightly constructed little song that's really tragic by Depeche Mode. And then I think about Hank Williams, and I think, why, the other end of the spectrum, why don't you treat me like you used to do? Why don't you love me like you used to do? Which is like comical, which is also an aspect of love. So ask me in an hour and I'll have a different answer, but that's the answer right now.
That's true, right? Our everybody's notion of like good love songs changes. 20 years ago, I would definitely have said a song by a Scottish artist named Fish, and the song is called Cliché. 15 years ago, I would probably have said Jets to Brazil and There in the Summer song. And by now, I would also settle on Depeche Mode, but I would choose Somebody because of the lyrics.
Yeah.
Awesome.
For me, the Depeche Mode, the way that the music progresses, it has this strange sort of, it has a beat, so you just get through it, whatever it is. It's not plodding like a lot of love songs or tragedies. But the orchestration is really interesting. The sounds come and go in the way that the noise comes and goes. And the Hank Williams, again, is totally different because it's so simple. You have the lyric and you have this totally predictable music, which is a great way of delivering the sentiment. Again, contrast, but they work for those reasons.
So let's cut straight to your upcoming record, Love's Holiday. Nico, I know that you do most of the writing, and when I look at the record, I have a feeling as if it starts with, I don't want to say the most hectic, but the most Oxbow-like song. And then it progresses up to the final song, which is a very sad and slow lament. As I know that you guys take a lot of thought or put a lot of thought into your records, I'm very sure that song progression is not an accident. But then the question is, why this way, not any other way?
There is a lot of elements of that question. We don't have time to address every element.
That's not a super simple answer.
Firstly, I begin the songs, but we all finish them together. There's a cohesive element. I listened to the new Tom York and Johnny Greenwood group, and it's really good. Smile, and then you listen to Radiohead, and it's so much deeper and richer. I think the things that Oxbow does together when we finish the songs together has a similar thing. It's pretty rich and interesting. The first song on the record, Dead Ahead, starts with a tritone, which is a really annoying interval. It's exactly even between an octave, and that was a useful way to have an upbeat rockin' song, which was the requirement to begin the record. The other one, the end of the record, is Gunnel, which is spelled oddly. I guess it's an Old English word, which probably came from French because everything seems to. And that was a song that I sang to my kid when he was just a baby. I would wake up every morning and record myself singing to my kid, first my boy and then my girl, first thing in the morning at 5, whenever they would wake up. And I put it in my phone, and then I wrote the guitar to it, and then we turned it in. It turned out to be this really slow blues, and that's what the choir sings. And it seems to end the record nicely because it has that finishing kind of quality. But and that's a trajectory of the album, but it could have gone other ways. That's my answer.
It does. Just to make it clear, you chose that not. You said it has like a finishing character. That band is not finished, right? Before anybody now has a heart attack.
No.
Finishing the album, yes. Go ahead.
Also, there were a couple other. I mean, we experimented with a couple of other sort of layouts of the order of the songs. Also, we recorded a lot more songs that are on the record. So, it's not like there was a vision from day one of what order things were going to end up appearing in. But sometimes these things, once you get them all recorded, they just sort of make sense, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I mean, like one thing that struck me is that, of course, the opening track can either only be an opening or a final track, right? Because of I wouldn't see it somewhere in the middle. It's.
I don't know.
Yeah, but again, I don't know the whole. As I don't know the whole material.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we've taken songs like that and put them in the middle. I mean, if you think of like, Lucky on Serenade in Red.
Which would also be a great cover, by the way. Lucky, Britney Spears, Eugene singing "She's So Lucky."
Right. It would be.
Okay. All right. I don't know. I don't know her songbook. Yeah. I like that rendition. So.
Yeah. Forget about the Great American Songbook. Just do Britney. Greg and Dan, what I noticed about the record, and I hope you don't mind my direct question, is this the easiest Oxbow record for you guys to ever have been part of?
You want to start, Dan, or you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Because I'm pretty sure we're going to say the same. Because I'm pretty sure we're going to say more or less the same thing.
Right. That's why you should just do it.
Absolutely not. It was maybe one of the more difficult ones in a lot of ways. Honestly, I've never really sat down and compared them in that way in my mind, like, oh, which one was harder to record? But they're all challenging, and they're all challenging in different ways. I think in many ways this one was maybe more challenging because I think there was a conscious feeling in the studio, that we are going to push ourselves to go in a slightly different sort of way. And that's challenging. I mean, it's much easier to just give in to whatever you emotionally want to do and just throw caution to the wind and do whatever you want, which is often the way we made records, in the past. And that creates a certain kind of thing, but there was definitely a conscious decision to do things a certain way and to make things a certain way. And that's difficult. That requires a more, for lack of a better word, more sort of cerebral approach to how you're going to play, and that's tough. It's tough for me.
Is there a song that shows that as an example? Particular song?
Probably Lovely Merc. And or 1,000 Hours. Actually, probably 1,000 Hours even more. Because the way I ended up playing 1,000 Hours is not at all the way I initially, responded to the music. And I really had to, even up as we were recording it, I was still unsure of what I was doing. Because I sort of even changed the way I was playing it in the studio as we were doing a couple of takes of it. We talked about it, and Joe Chiccarelli had some strong ideas about maybe doing it differently than I was doing it, and so it was challenging. Yeah, even though the final product sounds very simple, it was not. At least not in my head. It was not.
Simple is hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Simple is hard.
Simple is hard. Yeah.
Right. I was, I think we've kind of talked about sort of more essential pop songs, and really a great pop song might sound very simple, but then if you listen to what actually makes it all essentially a beautiful and perfect little construction, it's because the people chose to play exactly the few notes that they chose, exactly the same, exactly placed as they did.
Right.
So it's very different from something which is noisy and frantic, and you can go in and play a whole bunch of different noise and frantic stuff a zillion different ways. Some of these songs, it was really challenging to think, okay, what's the one way what are the few notes I'm going to choose, where I'm going to place them? And so if you listen to the parts, they might sound simple, but it took a long time to arrive at them. And also on some of these songs, they are quite simple and repetitive, but that doesn't mean that you just play the same thing over and over. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to the way these songs kind of evolve, there's a lot of little things happening that cause them to change. And so whether that's rhythmic changes or harmonic things, you'll hear some of the bass parts kind of take on a different role as the songs move, and even change the sort of harmonic center at times. And those were all terrifying choices to have to make for me, because it's like, all of a sudden you can start comparing yourself to all the great bass players out there and say, oh man, do I even know how to play this thing compared to all those people in the past who we cherish and listen to and love hearing.
So is there somebody where you say, okay, that is a direct influence on my bass playing for Love's Holiday?
Yeah, I think everybody in the band is so omnivorous when it comes to music.
No, I meant for you personally.
Yeah. Yes, all the spectacular bass players out there that I've had the pleasure of listening to and digesting. I mean, there's too many great players in so many different ways and so many different styles. That is the challenge, is how do you, for one record, synthesize all these things you would love to do and choose a path for that record. And that actually is a pretty significant challenge.
Greg, you already mentioned Joe Chiccarelli. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the third or the fourth time that you're working with him for a record. How was it to work with Joe?
Third is correct. Yeah, this is the third time. Yeah, third record.
So how was it to work with him again? Is he now like your steady? Is he your Bob Rock?
Well, it's fantastic to be working with him again. I think everyone in the band would agree to that. And in many ways, it gets easier and it works better and better the more we work with him. Part of it, I think, is a trust issue between both him trusting us and us trusting him, which I think we all do at this point. We used to make records in a different way. I think you guys were chatting a little bit about Albini when I first sort of joined here. Yeah. But and even any of the other producers we worked with, like, everybody works in a very different way. And we used to work in a very sort of, I don't know what the word is, more free-form, open, sort of, who knows what's going to happen, right? Whereas Joe is much more focused and seems to have, he has great vision right from the beginning of what he's doing. And, and I think we as a group have learned to really implicitly trust whatever he's got in his head, I like that. I like this way of working.
Have you as a band then also gotten better over the years in getting your idea of what you want across to him?
Well, I don't know that there was any need for us to get better at that. Like, I think he understands us. However, I don't know. I've never asked him what he thinks about, how he understands us. Like, I don't think for better or worse. I don't think. I don't know. I don't think the question is relevant. Does that make any sense?
I mean, for me, for voice, he has been pretty steadfast in actually pulling me aside at some point and wanting to know how I'm hearing the voicing coming across to come across. And and I've spoken about how I hear the voice before. And it's incorrect to say I wasn't listened to, but I don't think I was understood as well as Chiccarelli has been able to understand, up to and including the extent when I was singing for Love's Holiday. There was a moment when I was listening to my voice as I'm singing, and I couldn't believe it was me. I mean, what he had, what he and Nico had done with the mic setup or whatever was coming through my headphones. It was an out of body weirdness where it was like I was watching me do something that I wasn't doing. And I have to say that probably comes at this point from, having correctly gleaned how it is that I am trying to kind of communicate the emotional tone and timbre of the lyrics that have been written. So it's a level of paying attention that I think Greg is hinting at that makes it so like all I have to do is show up and just open my mouth. Once I've expressed an interest in having the voice sound like this, I wanted to, like I remember a Narcotic story, I said I wanted to sound like something I'm whispering to you. And each record I've kind of had a different take on how it is. I think I want my voice to sound. So he and Nico have done a really cool job of making that happen. Making it possible for
having been in front of the microphone briefly when Eugene's talking about the headphone mix and that it's very good, that it gives you an out-of-body experience because it sounds like a fucking record already.
Yeah,
I think. I would say just really briefly that Joe, there's a wonderful thing in hanging out with super, super intelligent people. And one of the best things is that they know what you're talking about. Anything that comes out of your mouth is understood. And that's a really nice thing. I'm a musician because music is a great way of communicating. Words are difficult sometimes for me. And Joe has this musical intelligence. You mentioned, I have this in mind. He goes, yeah, okay. We talk about that within the band a lot. I'm thinking of the sound. I'm thinking that maybe we mix this record like a Depeche Mode record. What? Oxbow, Depeche Mode? It could be a tenuous connection. He's like, oh yeah, I get it. And that's a pretty wonderful thing to have that understanding from Joe.
So, Eugene, you already hinted or stated somewhere in the press releases for the record that you were kind of bored or didn't understand why nobody had noticed on the previous Oxbow records how much love and how many love songs or how many songs related to love are on those records. But now you said that you can see that. Can you give an example of which songs made you understand, oh, this is a song where everybody clearly sees, okay, it's about love, in contrast to other stuff that we did before?
Well, I'll go into that backwards. A song like, let's say, The Stabbing Hand, in my mind, is 100% a love song, but everybody, I'm imagining, gets thrown by the title. And of course, maybe not just the title, maybe the imagery, and maybe the actual words, but it is an actual fact a love song, right?
Which goes back to what I was saying before. Yeah. Everything.
Yeah. Whereas, you have a song like 1,000 Hours, which actually has a line, I love you too much. I mean, this is, I felt like it was offering a cheat code to even say that in the press release. But at this point, I think that's what press releases are for, cheat codes. And I just didn't want to go through a whole nother interview cycle with people using the same words and the same kind of intonation about, crazy, wild, confrontational, blah, blah, blah. No, this is a love song. This is a love. That's the lyrical preoccupation and my place in space and writing the words for this. So though unlike other records, there was no coordinated effort because the music led everything. So the music determined the lyrical content. But when I look at the lyrics as they're laid out in front of me, the preoccupation was still for me, and like Nico suggested in the beginning, whether it's agape or eros or philia, well, probably a lot less philia. I'm not a real philia guy, but maybe agape or eros. This is the love was a preoccupation.
So Dan, how did you, or no, let's ask otherwise. How did it feel when Nico came up with these songs and presented his first ideas before you then elaborated on them?
I think it felt very familiar and consistent. And I was thinking about our process, seeing your drafted question. Nico joyously brings new things he's written in, and openly shares stuff that he has proudly just created, and shares things early enough that there, can be a fairly basic riff or something. And I think our first thought is, Nico, you sound so exciting, but this doesn't sound like much. But the thing is that we know that, just like Nico was saying about Joe, Nico has a vision, which we trust, and we know that, okay, if he's excited about something, it's gonna become something cool. But I think the process, I've referred to it over the years as subverting. It's one of, taking something that comes in and then figuring out what's going to flesh it out. And sometimes that means that Greg and I have very similar kind of sort of process of working through this stuff and trying to figure out, okay, what's going to give it the depth that we want from the kind of, rhythm section perspective, or even the song shape perspective. So the process is always like, a couple of years of playing over these things, and all three of us evolving the song together. And it's a great process. It's not easy. And meanwhile, Eugene is digesting what we're doing and internally processing it. So it feels very familiar, and it's not easy because it might be months or a year when we're playing these things where they just don't feel like they yet have the merit, to become a song that's part of the catalog. Yeah. And then eventually we get there.
The way you say it, it sounds as if there are songs on this record that are older than the others. Are there songs that have been, let's say, pre-pandemic?
There were two songs on this record that are 22 years old. That have been
already
sitting.
Go vote, drink alcohol.
Yes, and drink, and
not only that, but some of them were recorded pre-pandemic, right? Wow. I mean, when we went into actually the first recording session for this record was in 2019, just as the pandemic was sort of starting to happen, and in fact, the pandemic put a big pause on everything that we were doing as far as recording, right? Obviously. So.
Wow. I still don't get over those 22 years thing. That's like amazing.
We can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, maybe you explain how can a song be born 22 years ago? And I guess that it must have been laid aside at some point, right? And
yeah, of course. Yeah.
And how did it resurface?
There's a lot of different ways
usually out of desperation.
There's a lot of different ways to address that. A song like All Gone, I've been playing on piano the whole time. And I actually also $1 Million Weekend I've been playing on guitar. It's a fun solo guitar. And I learned how to sing it. I can sing and play $1 Million Weekend at the same time.
So Eugene can rest.
No, actually,
yes,
Nico's voice is in my head when I'm trying to sing it. There's a part where it goes really high that Nico does when he sings it that I've had to develop workarounds for because I can't get that high. But it's been a very useful vocal guide for me in trying to get through the song. So
okay, but then again, how do those songs resurface?
Well, so we've done that before. So there's a song on Narcotic Story called, what is that? The piano song on Narcotic Story. that was started as a guitar song that I stuck on piano. What's the name of the song, guys?
I don't remember either.
Joe uses it as a when he's setting up for a mix, like sort of test the room out with songs. That's one of the songs. She's a Find. She's a Find was a very old song when we recorded it, and that could have been a Whipping Boys song. That was a band that Eugene and I were in before, and Dan started to play it. Yeah. Dan was playing drums, and he played a little on bass, I think. And Dan was actually a good instigator, saying, "No, it's not ready. It's not ready." I went, for reasons we could get into, to Tunisia. I sat in a hotel in Tunis for 3 weeks, went out and saw some archaeological stuff, and sat and worked on what became She's a Find. I couldn't finish it. It wasn't done. The other songs on Love's Holiday, we wanted originally to be another record. Eugene and I were thinking about doing it, and that never came to fruition, but we had these 2 very good songs, and this was the time to do it. Eugene said, let's use those songs on this record. And this record was part of this time of abundance. And we're working on another record now based on all the songs we recorded 2019, March of 2020. We started. So it was a time to sort of use everything we had. We went into the vaults and got old stuff too, and new stuff. I wrote a song in March, April, and we recorded it, Eugene and I, in July of 21, I guess, when we could go in and do the vocals for Love's Holiday.
Yeah.
So very old, very new. We just used everything we had, 18 songs.
So we can expect a new Oxbow record in less than 6 years.
No, not
hey,
necessarily.
Touch wood.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. I mean, like, I know that Oxbow is known for being a loud ass noise band, and now you come up with something that is very gentle on the ear in some ways, right? You've already hinted at it, but do you think that cutting away a lot of the stuff that you have been known for, is that some kind of the most subversive thing that you've done by now? Because you don't give a fuck about people's expectations, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone would like to think that they're, enough free of their own ego to say, I don't give a fuck what anyone else thinks about what I'm doing, as long as I'm happy. That's certainly something to strive for. I don't know that anyone is honestly that, that freed, but yeah, it was somewhat subversive, and we even voiced that out loud. And I think Chiccarelli even voiced it out loud, saying, look, if Oxbow being kind of known for doing odd things, the oddest thing for you to do at this moment is not to do any of that stuff, right?
Sure.
Pull things back. Not so much layering, not so much I'm reluctant to use the word noise, but not so much noise, so yeah, I think that's a good insight on your part.
I think one of the things that we did that was different, I mean, we've always had very gentle, very subtle music. I think on the first album, the song, we've always done that. I think for me, what is transgressive, the most difficult, weird, different thing, as Greg said, is to be simple, to have clear ideas presented forthrightly. There's a lot of emotion, which is what we do, and a lot of complexity still, but hopefully the ideas come across, the music comes across simply, and as Dan was saying, the note choices are precise rather than just going hog wild. That's what I think is the most crazy wild thing for Oxbow to do, to become simple.
Now let's be subversive again and think of how to play those songs live. Could you imagine doing any of those songs in a very different way live?
Well, we're going to have to. I mean, like I'm sure there's so much choral and other singing.
Oh, you're not going to take a 15 people person chorus choir with you?
Well,
we're waiting for your check. Send us the money, we'll do it.
Yeah, we would actually love to do that. I think all of us would love to do that, but the practicality of it is, probably we're not going to do that, at least not regularly. So yeah, we ourselves have to figure out how to play these songs live. And if you know how to do it, let us know.
Well, I was going to say, there's an element which is absolutely unchanged for us, which is beautiful sounds, attention to dynamics, and Eugene's voice playing a very significant part in the whole sonic field here. And these songs are great that way, and they're completely consistent. And they're sparse, but they're beautiful. The space adds great tension. It exposes Eugene's voice, features it even more in terms of character. So I think they're natural Oxbow songs for conveying the emotion that Nico mentioned.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of thinking, well, we could try to add some of the things that we added in the studio, but the more I think about it, just stripping this stuff down and leaving that breathing space just makes these songs more and more intense. And I feel like that's what great songcraft has done over the years, forever, is get to the emotion through that balance of space and exposure. And so I think it's a very rich field. It's going to be super fun to be playing this stuff live and trying to get them to be as intense as any other Oxbow music, but at their simple core.
Yeah, and I think to stay on this point for just a second, it's not that different than some of the other records, really. I mean, there's always been a lot of overdubs on our records, whether it be instruments or vocals, and we've always had to sort of figure out, well, how do we interpret this live to capture the same energy without the same amount of denseness, and so in that way, it's not really any different. The songs are a little different, so it's certainly going to be a challenge, but it's always a challenge,
So Dan has already mentioned Eugene's voice being an integral part of that Oxbow soundscape. Eugene, would you be mad if I said that on this record you sound like a mix or a crossover between Nick Cave and Eddie Vedder?
You're not the first to say that. In actual fact, the first one to make the comparison to Eddie Vedder was my wonderful ex-wife, who at one point, and I don't know what record it would have been when we were still married, she listened and said, this could be on the radio. You sound like, who is that guy that sings Jeremy? And I was like, okay, just stop talking. I think that's what I said at the time, because I was not comfortable with the comparison. But and of course I don't hear that. What was you said? What did you say? Eddie Vedder and who? Nick Cave.
Who's that again? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Nick Cave was that guy at the coronation. I think that's the monarchist. The monarchist at the
coronation.
Nice suit. In a nice suit.
That was the bishop. He's the
bishop. The bishop. So I don't, I mean, Eddie Vedder has been responsible for some what they used to say about Mariah Carey and what I call oversouling. Yeah. But these are not these people who know their way around their voice. More importantly, they understand their voice. I mean, vocally, I think I was negatively affected by what happened in the olden days with Whipping Boy when we made the move to Muru Muru. And it dawned on me at one point, Albini had said something that was fairly funny. He said, listen, if you go to the store and buy toilet paper and they give you sandpaper, when you get home, you're going to be pretty upset. And I figured, look, the success or failure of Muru Muru, which was Whipping Boy's second record, hung on the fact that people were really rigid in their understanding of what Whipping Boy was, and that, when they bought Whipping Boy, what they wanted to get was toilet paper, or in this case, hardcore music. And Muru Muru very definitely wasn't hardcore music. We hadn't earned that. We just took a lot of acid and decided to make this record that sounded like guys who Took a lot of acid might make, and people were not. That was probably the worst selling record that I ever put money into. So I remember thinking with Oxbow that I wanted to change the vocal conversation pretty soon. I didn't want to become Oxbow to be a genre act, or I didn't want to be caught in that horrible trap of, repeating ourselves, or the James Hetfield thing of like, what do I do at this point in the song? Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah. I don't want to just rely on well-used tropes that we ourselves had created, but were still tropes for us. I wanted to migrate the vocal and the conversation to someplace else, to something else. And so, if you listen to Fuckfest and you listen to Love's Holiday, the vocal has changed pretty significantly, but it's been changed in small, subtle measures so that it still sounds like me, still sounds like Oxbow, but these are different. These, in addition to the fact that it's over such a long period of time, my voice has changed as well. But I wanted people to that nobody would have been ready to hear Love's Holiday without all the other records before it. So I think that's kind of the essence of growth and what you need to pay attention to if you're going to be singing. Does Cave do this? Does Vedder do this? I don't know. I don't know them.
Gotta ask him.
Yeah. Well, last time I spoke with Nick Cave, I think I offended him. So I don't know that there'll be any future engagements where I have a chance to ask him. So
you have already hinted at, like, there has been this choir on the record, and there have been these choral passages. Who came up with the idea of incorporating these gentle layers into the songs?
I think the choir stuff came from trying to imagine All Gone, what to do with that song. That's a really emotionally important song for me, and I wanted it. I went to church as a kid. My father is quite religious in a very progressive way, and choirs have traditionally been used in churches, and that's where I was introduced to choirs in a religious context. So it has that sort of importance feeling if religion is talking about important things to people. So the choir, that was the idea of using a choir, was helped along by our folks, our friends who started Supersonic Festival in Birmingham, England, Jenny and Lisa continues to run Supersonic Festival. She's an amazing ally of mine, of ours, a good friend. And I had a conversation with Lisa on the telephone from Birmingham to San Francisco. She said, I want to have you guys come and play. And at the festival, what are you doing? And I said, well, we're making a record. And she said, what are you going to do next? What is interesting? And I shared with her something that I'm not sure I'd talked to the band yet about. I want to put a choir on this old song. All Gone is one of the 22-year-old songs. And she said, okay, let's do it. Let's do it live. And, so we went to Birmingham and had a couple days rehearsal with a choir that she helped assemble, which is really important we are creative people, and we try to present creative, but we need help. We need people that believe in what we're doing. And that was this great example of instigating us to take our vision, to the people, that people hear what's in our heads. And then Greg kind of said, okay, what if we had no horns and no strings and had only used voices? It was something like that. So these are the things that push this record to be a bunch of voices. And we have Kristen Hayter doing a lot of vocals on Lovely Merc. And we have Roger Joseph Manning Jr. singing a lot of vocals on $1 Million Weekend. And we have actually a 15-voice choir doubled on All Gone and Night the Room Started Burning. And suddenly it's different. It's very Oxbow, but we arrived at that. And I think it's an interesting place to go for us to have voices as the extra element. And sort of fleshing out the music and making the message that we're trying to convey, a musical message, a lyrical message, to get that across to people.
So did you already have those 3 additional vocal sets in mind, or did you have already those 3 2 persons and the choir in mind when you included them?
Interesting question. So I bring up Lisa and Supersonic Festival because that pushed me to orchestrate the voices. So I put it on paper into my computer in a notation program in Sibelius, and worked on the arrangement over and over again with Joe's help, with the choir director's help. We had a really great choir. So that kind of, belief, instigation to get it out. I hear these things in my head, but it's a lot of work to get it out so that people can help us to play it, and then we can record it and let people hear it. Kristen, I sent her a demo. That song began as a totally non-Oxbow song, but I had the melody in mind, and I put it on paper for her and made a demo, sent it to Roger, and made a demo of me singing. And Roger and I sang together in a band a long time ago. So I sent him a demo, which somebody will hear someday, and he said, "Oh yeah." And then he took that even further, just like Kristen took that even further, just like we worked on the choir stuff. It was a collaborative effort, but I had in mind a way to start. What are you saying, Greg?
No, I was just going to say, I don't think, I don't want to speak for you, but I don't think when you originally wrote these and when we figured them out, I don't think anyone had Kristen and Roger in mind right at that very beginning, right at the genesis. I think that came later,
Certainly for Kristen. Unfortunately, I didn't know her singing. Roger, of course, I knew from Jellyfish years ago. I kind of did, but it was kind of like a crazy dream. Like sometimes you think like, oh, what if we got, Clinton to play saxophone, or Roger? Yeah, it'd be great on this, but no, that's crazy. And Chiccarelli was the guy that said, hey, why don't we get, and I was like, I know Roger from years ago, and he's a friend of mine, and God, okay, let's do it.
I remember that.
I thought of him. Yeah.
So it didn't happen at Genesis, but at Exodus.
Correct. Whenever that is, whenever Exodus is, we'll be ready.
It's isn't it like the last or the fourth book?
It's the movement of the people.
Yeah. But interestingly, it's also a band, right? So you have Genesis on one.
Sorry.
Good for you. Check me.
All good. Nico, you already said that you had these arrangements, and how did you go about arranging the stuff for like, I think you have a flute, an oboe, I hope that's the right pronunciation in English, clarinet, and I forgot another one that you have on there.
Yeah. That in particular, that's on $1 Million Weekend. So we did have this dictum. We had this rule, a law that would be only voices that couldn't make human voices have enough of a contrast, the right character. So did have some woodwinds, did have some piano on $1 Million Weekend, and that's a rough imitation of a particular kind of ensemble, and so that's why those instruments are on there. What was the question again?
You have already basically answered that one. Dan, this is your eighth or ninth album, right? In 35 years. Where do you see yourself and the band in, let's say, 10 more years?
Well, assuming we're fortunate enough to be alive, hopefully doing the same thing, which is finding ways to make time in our lives to make beautiful music. And I think for all of us, making music is very important, and we've been very fortunate to be able to work together to do that, and the results have been, I think, great, very rewarding. I would be very happy with these records if we weren't even giving them to other people, but just had them so that, you know, I could occasionally pull them out and listen to, because I really enjoy the product of what we've done together. And so I hope in 10 years, maybe we can, you know, keep doing this and make a few more records and play some shows. It's
by the way, as you say, shows, and Nico has been talking about getting these choral arrangements initiated, basically in England. I know that you're playing Supersonic this year. Will there be a choir?
We did that already, so no. And it was an incredible amount of effort. We spent a lot of Lisa's Supersonic budget to get it together. We tested everyone's patience, mine, Oxbow's, and the singers. It was an incredible experience, but we've done that, so we're going to move on to something else. I think, as we've been saying, the challenge this time is to make the four of us play it, these songs. So you should have been at Supersonic in 2018, I think that was, or 2017.
I tell you, that was a heady experience. It was if I've ever come close to completely losing my mind on stage, that was probably it. You know, because you at one point, you know, you're standing in front of the mic and you see the audience arrayed in front of you, and then you turn behind and you see the choir arrayed behind you. And I think we even had an audio visual thing element. So you had this 60-foot tall screen with, you know, the Oxbow record cover and various Oxbow connected images, you know, on the screen while we were playing. And it was like that. It's like that great moment in the original Claude Rains version of The Invisible Man, when it becomes clear to everybody around him that he's lost his mind. And so, like, I'm looking at the audience and all this choir, and I'm just, it was, to maintain any reasonable sense of control, was in the briefest of moments very, very difficult. You know, my hat goes off to people who make this a routine part of their musical presentation. You know, I'm thinking like the Rolling Stones or whoever. It's got to be, I guess maybe they do varying degrees of success in addressing this, but I could see how easily you would slip into total non-reality. So,
Eugene, you're being the one that's responsible for most of the lyrics, right? How hard was it for you to stick to one theme from many different perspectives? But how difficult was it to stick to one theme on this record?
Well, it was a really compelling, is super compelling to approach it. It was like a weird raw shot thing. And the only other experience I had that was like that was that Sal Mineo record I did with Jamie Stewart from Juju, where he said, "Oh, let me send you the songs." And he sends me 8 songs. And so I sit and I write lyrics for 8 songs. And he goes, "Change of direction. Let me send you new songs." And then he sends me 22 songs, which have nothing to do with the 8 songs, which have been thrown out. And so then I had to write lyrics to, and that was a little more kludgy. Whereas what happened with this is there were no set lyrics. There was no delivery of lyrics a priori to the music. We'd be in practice and coming up with a song, and I wrote a lot of those lyrics on my phone at practice. And in my mind, the music dictated the lyric. But of course, through that, like a raw shot, after 3 or 4, you start to see themes emerge. And so after about 3 or 4, and this is me just pulling, like automatic writing, just pulling the lyric out of the musical air at practice, you know, certain themes start to emerge. And this is why you have Love's Holiday.
One other thing that is very interesting about the record is that you're gonna have, and Greg, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're gonna have a video for every song, right?
Well, the goal is to have a video for every song, and we are very close to that right now. Okay. So I think there's a good likelihood that's going to happen. Yeah.
And how do you choose the directors who do that?
Well, same way we do anything. Chaos.
Yeah. a lot of arguing, and you know, we all quit the band and rejoined, and you know,
like Ringo. Yeah.
But are those? Yeah, you go.
I mean, Eugene just sent out and basically said, didn't you just send us people and say, hey, if anybody wants to, you know,
to do it,
come on out.
Well, Chris Purdy we'd worked with before, so that was easy.
That was easy. Yeah.
Kieran had approached us during the COVID time. He had worked on a pretty cool film, and he was wanting ideally to do an Oxbow film, which I think he still intends to do that. And he did some stuff when he was here doing the video, but then I figured, well, I don't know if I want to get involved in the film, but maybe asking him to do the video might make sense because it's an easy take and he could probably do it without screwing it up too badly. Anna Paula Martin is the wife of Jabi Iriando, the guy who plays guitar in Buñuel, and she had done some stuff that I thought was pretty phenomenal. And I said, you know, can't pay you much. We pay your plane ticket, give you a place to stay and food. When you get out here, that's the price for the video. And they were excited to come and make it happen. And then John Levy and Zev, Nico Sort. What's his name?
Zev
Deans. Yeah, that's right. Nico sourced, and Nico would have to tell you how he did that. And then I think that's about it thus far.
Yeah, and I mean, we all watched, you know, all of these people have, you know, reels online of things they've made, and you know, we looked at them, and if we thought they all had compelling, you know, stuff that they had done, and we thought they could do a good job or any job, we all kind of agreed. I mean, it was a little challenging, but it wasn't terrible. I mean, it's not like we had 500 people all clamoring to make Oxbow videos. You know what I mean? Like,
the budget is a limiting factor.
Yeah, budget. Yeah, and budget narrows down the candidates really quick. You know, so.
But did Patton not give you 50,000 per video?
Shockingly, no. Shockingly, no. Yeah.
No, more importantly, I don't believe he spends that kind of money on their videos either. So whether we're talking Faith No More, I don't think they spend that kind of money. So
I have two more questions before we come to our infamous quickfire round. One, also again related to those videos. Dan, are these videos gonna relate one coherent story, or are they chapters?
I hadn't thought about that, but coherency is not something I necessarily associate to even the insides of the one video. I don't know, the thing that was great about those videos, I think that the directors came in and had visions that in several cases I looked at and just didn't even get. And it was wonderful that they built their own stories that are complex and intriguing and interesting to our songs. And so it's just this other very interesting dimension. So in that they are all based on the songs in our record, and that has become a coherency out of some very different content and very different types of songs. The videos are also very, very different. And I think that the great coherency comes from they were all inspired by the body of the music. But I really like the fact that they're extremely different videos.
Yeah,
and I think if anything, it's wonderful that they stand alone rather than fitting together. So I guess that would be my response to that question.
Yeah, and each individual director only got the song or two that we were interested in them making a video for. So really, like Dan is saying, each director took their inspiration from that particular song and not from necessarily the record as a whole. So I guess the short answer is no, but since the songs are cohesive in some ways, the answer is yes. You know what I mean?
I know.
You can view it either way.
And then last question for whoever wants to answer. When I listen to this record, I don't ask me why, but I have a feeling as if I'm listening to some kind of rockified, modernized version of like a Motown soul thing. Not only because of the lyrics and the topic, but I think there is some kind of grandezza in the songs. Was that something that you guys intended to have on this record?
You know, when you say that, I think about, as a European, how you perceive Motown, and it might be different than how we perceive as Americans Motown. So I think about that, like, what the hell do you mean? So I wonder.
Whenever I think of Motown, I don't want to say great arrangements or opulency. I'm thinking more of a certain sound. There is a certain warmth. There is a certain soulfulness, not necessarily funkiness in the bass lines, for example. There are some wonderful plings and plungs here and there on the guitar lines. And there are also very often, basically all the time, great voices. That's for me is Motown.
Yeah, okay. I would say, and thank you for clarifying that, I would say just really the simplest thing I could say to that is that we have always been that. You see that more live, but by taking away all the layers and exposing the bones of the songs and the melodies that exist in every instrument, that shines through clearly. I think that's part of the essential Oxbow thing that we do together. Now you can hear it.
Then I have to put another question right next to that one. I mean, like you say that you're more or less exposing the core of the band right now, or what is behind all the layers that we have heard in the past. Are you afraid of the reactions to the record?
Yes and no. Because the work is so very personal. It's impossible for me to distance it. You know, you talk about I love all my children. I love our songs. That's true. But at the same time, this is what we needed to do, and I'm very proud of it. So no.
I would, if you think about your previous question, you know, there's rock music and then there's rock and roll. You know, rock and roll, rock wasn't a piece of granite. It was motion. Rock and roll is what we've always done, and that includes the swing and the saunter and the sway and the groove and the passion. You know, it's R&B, it's whatever you want to call it, but it's what American popular music has been about almost forever, even to you know, and even back to the things that led to that before. So I think it's very consistent. I think what's unfortunate and what you could be a little scared of in terms of the responses, if people aren't willing to put the effort in to realize that. And it was funny to see a couple of the comments on the videos where people were, you know, comparing it to other music and somehow thinking that was a problem. Maybe you're implying that was a problem. And really, you know, shame on anyone who's not willing to think about what the lineage is and where this stuff comes from. I think, you know, there's a reason why Motown captivated certainly America and much of the world. And again, it's simple, beautiful songs, beautifully produced, wonderful voices, fundamental issues about love and the human condition. And what's more Oxbow than that, you know? So
well, I'm not sure about the voice. But other than that, totally fine.
What's funny is there's a friend of mine, his name is Mr. Marcus, and he came up with the statement. He was like, hey, they knew what the job was when they took it. And so we've been really, in a haphazard way, been really assiduous about, again, giving people enough cheat codes to understand this record. And I didn't realize how effective we had been until yesterday, when I get in the mail the new copy of Decibel, right? Which I get every month. They send it to me, and it's like I'm looking at PR photo, and you know, people, bands I like, people looking grim, and then I surprised, didn't know that we were in it in this issue. There's an Epicac ad page, and I feel pretty happy. We're on there with Dave Lombardo's Right of Percussion, as well as Spotlights, and the Oxbow section, which I'll show here. There's just something eerily and perfectly different about the Oxbow section. It's just, if you're not paying attention and if you don't get this record, it's because you weren't paying attention, because we're saying in every way possible, that this is not what you expect, even including the text that they put here, where they describe it as an evolution in Oxbow's journey. Like we're fucking telling you. And if you're not willing to listen, then the rest of the record is not for you anyway, right? So, I mean, even including the photo, it's so different from all of the other photos that are in here. And I remember the day we took the photo out by the San Francisco Bay, and it does what Oxbow so perfectly does. It's like, it's just a photo, but it's just eerily different from everything else in that whole magazine. So, which is really perfect.
Yeah, and I think Oxbow fans, if you will, have proven themselves to be pretty open-minded. And I think I don't think, I'm not worried at all. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe I should be. I'm not.
No. Well, let's start with the fact that we will never make back what we put into it. So,
it's free. It's very free. Yeah.
So what? So somebody doesn't like it. What about the dollars connected to it, right?
Yeah.
So, first of all, guys, thanks for all those wonderful insights into the record and its development. But as usual, we have a certain way of starting our interviews, and we have a certain way of ending our interviews. And we always end it with our infamous quickfire round. You get two alternatives, like roses versus tulips, black versus white, AC versus DC, and you have to choose. As you are four, and I don't want to stretch it too much, I will always ask two of you, so that not everyone has to give a choice. But please give a choice, and maybe a very short, Eugene, that one is for you, short explanation. Nico and Dan, if you could choose one country to travel to right now, France or Italy?
Italy.
France, see family.
Eugene and Nico, I know you don't want to work with one of them, but let's say, whose body of work do you like more, Bob Rock or Rick Rubin?
I'm gonna say Rick Rubin, just because I could remind him of the conversation that we had where I told him he would never make it. Fuck.
Nico, whom would you choose?
I like Rick Rubin's body of work, and he's an interesting cat, but I'll just to offer the other alternative, Bob Rock has done some really interesting stuff too.
Yeah, Black Album. Sure. Eugene and Dan. Unsane versus the Jesus Lizard.
Oh, Jesus Lizard.
Dan, you as well?
Yeah, I think so. And I know their music more than Unsane, so maybe I don't have a full set of information, but I appreciate what they've done.
Greg and Dan, Throbbing Gristle or Einstürzende Neubauten?
Throbbing Gristle, no question. No question. Yeah. I still listen to Throbbing Gristle at work, once a month at least. It's playing in my earbuds. It's fantastic.
And then, whom would you choose?
I would choose both, because I need to listen to both of those folks a lot more. Haven't spent enough time.
Greg and Nico, Delec or KRS-One? To throw some hip hop.
Yeah,
there's only one right answer.
KRS-One is awesome, but Dalek.
I still find it very funny that you believe that if you would put the little two dots above the A, that people would pronounce it dialect.
That's what he says. There's a difference between the sound of things. Having looked at French, there's a difference between the sound of things and how they're spelled. There's no correlation necessarily.
Yeah, but that's how Will explained it to me a few months ago. And I was
listen.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, my wife just explained to me that the name of cities in Poland changes depending on whether you're there, or going there. If you're going there, it's not Warszawa, it's Warszawi. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? How does that work?
And you pointed out male names, depending on the case and inflection, can turn into sounding like females.
Yes, correct.
So much for Polish.
Yeah.
Greg and Eugene, last one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would be able to answer it. Fugazi or minor threat?
Oh, yeah, minor threat. I mean, Fugazi took post-punk to a really interesting place, but I've actually played with Minor Threat, and so for me, it's a mix of nostalgia and the first time I had seen them, it was for hardcore at the time. I thought it was a really compelling left foot step. You know, there were a lot of things that they did really differently, and at the age that they were some of the best players around at the time. You know, Ian's vocals were lacking. Guy is a much better vocalist, but Minor Threat in total much more significant for me.
Greg, what would be your choice?
You know, it's pretty close, I got to say, for all the reasons that Eugene just said, but I think I'm going to have to also go with Minor Threat. But it's close. You know, honestly, I probably like Fugazi more than Eugene does. I probably listen to Fugazi more than I listen to Minor Threat, but I still think in some ways Minor Threat is more significant to me. More significant, maybe.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
So guys, thanks for your time. This is early morning San Francisco, by the way, for everybody. This is early morning on the West Coast. Thanks for sneaking your time, and all the best with the new record. I really like it. I really think it's a very good evolution in the sound of the band.
That's what the magazine says.
Yeah.
Apart from joking, I really like the fact that one can see the core of Oxbow very clearly. And what I did, I also went back and listened to some of the older records, and I gotta say, just what Nico also mentioned at the beginning, it's not as if it's coming out of a blue.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say, you know, one thing is listening for the core of Oxbow, the other is listening for the core of the listener. I mean, you know, this is I'm looking forward to hopefully people who listen to this record having to evaluate if they respond negatively, why, because part of the reason they might be responding negatively is because they have expectations that they should like a different type of music, and it gets into you know, an interesting question of self-reflection in both directions.
That's true. So guys, thanks for the record, thanks for the interview, and thanks for all the time. I wish you all a good Saturday afternoon. No, not afternoon, whole Saturday. For me, it's just
the whole Saturday.
And I hope to catch you in August when you're back in Europe. So
September.
Where?
September. Isn't it September? September? I thought it was August.
September.
September is even better. Even better.
Yeah.
What city might we see you in? What city might we see you in, Thorsten?
I mean, like, I live close to Frankfurt, but I think I saw something that you play some Western Germany, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for sure.
Bochum, in Bochum, perhaps. Yeah.
Bochum.
Bochum.
Jawohl. So guys, love to see you there, and thanks for the record. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been fun.
Later, man.
Fun stuff.